Alright, so Netflix put out another Resident Evil trailer. This, of course, being for the live-action TV series starring Lance Reddick. Supposedly, this is going to be the final trailer, so why don't we go ahead and see what they try to show us to entice us into watching this series, shall we?
They said the world would end in 2036, but they were wrong. The world ended a long time ago.
So again, the action actually does look pretty fun. I just wish this didn't have the Resident Evil name attached to it. But you know what? There's some stuff I'm going to get into in depth later on. Another article to read with an interview with Andrew Dabb, the showrunner. I think Resident Evil fans are going to be a bit interested in what he has to say this time as well.
Umbrella, a company besieged by scandal, is now trying to reinvent itself.
Company besieged by scandal is trying to reinvent itself. Trying to reinvent itself. That makes so much sense, because a company that already went out of business because of horrible events that it caused would, of course, be able to make a comeback and make consumer products again, medications specifically, and be able to found a new city, a new Raccoon City, in memory of the city that it brought to ruin decades prior. That makes total sense that it's actually able to happen. That's not contrived at all. It's definitely not stupid that they just want to be able to use the name Umbrella. Because remember, folks, as the showrunner says, the games are the backstory to this series. This series is a sequel to the games. Don't forget that. It's important. And of course they're doing a stupid thing with the old-timey upbeat music over horror imagery as this kind of goes on. As I established, I'm really tired of that.
The old Umbrella made mistakes. The things we're working on today, they're gonna change.
Yeah, Umbrella's gonna change the world. So something that has managed to slip by my attention is that this character, who I called out as having a kind of Excella Gioni vibe, the character from Resident Evil 5, her name is Evelyn Marcus. And she is the daughter of Umbrella co-founder James Marcus, the villain from Resident Evil 0. This is addressed in the article I mentioned that I'm going to go over later. I just want to see what you guys feel about that.
The world.
The drug contains...
Looks like a cheesy Umbrella infomercial kind of a thing. Honestly, it looks on par with a lot of the medication commercials we see in real life.
T-virus. The T-virus can make monsters.
Billions will die.
We've got Billy Wesker looking a bit dead here. Jade Wesker looking a bit upset. So I get the feeling a lot of the story is going to revolve around the fact that Jade Wesker thinks her sister Billy died in these past portions of the story. And then in the future, she's going to end up finding out that Billy is actually alive, still working for Umbrella, and probably developing monsters. I'm already groaning just thinking about this. And we're going to see, this trailer pretty much spills the beans on that plot.
Everyone keep your mouth shut.
Oh no! Oh, that's legitimately horrifying. Oh no! Oh no! We gotta nuke it from orbit. It's the only way. Who the hell is that? Is that Dr. Salvador? Yeah, I think that's supposed to be Dr. Salvador, who we saw a glimpse of in the previous teaser. And we also saw him in a caged area using his chainsaw, so this is probably him entering that area where he's going to use the chainsaw to do whatever. I'm just really exhausted by this. More shots of Billy looking disturbed.
Fuck.
You know, I'm being really down on this, but the fact of the matter is, and I can't stress this enough, if this didn't have the Resident Evil name, I would see a trailer like this and I'd be like, looks like a fun series. I might not like the high school aspect of it, but the action looks cool. The main character looks alright. You know, the fuck it attitude here. It's like, but it's got the Resident Evil name attached to it. It's got direct ties to Resident Evil. It's got characters that they claim are from the games, but they're not. Yeah, stuff like this, like the chainsaw action, looks like it's going to be at least like a gory, over-the-top, really cool moment, you know? Got Wesker rubbing blood all over his face for some damn strange reason. Don't know what that's about.
Marriage is complicated.
So there's going to be humor as well. Marriage is complicated. Yeah, because we see Jade here opening up this room where a zombie is handcuffed. Behind her is kind of a typical looking kitchen. So this must be that woman's husband. Alright.
Marriage is complicated.
Nice eyeball pop there. Still don't know who this guy is. As bad as this kind of looks, just it's kind of neat to see the skin burning off of a zombie and having it potentially still pose a threat. I mean, I assume, just like in video games. I think you saw the eyeball melt away there too. It's kind of neat. Don't know who this chubby dude is. I'm sure he's going to get Odysee at some point. And yeah, here we kind of have the reveal I was talking about. Here we have Jade with some presumably like umbrella enforcers behind her. She's turning very dramatically. And we have the adult Billy Wesker. So, I don't know. But we kind of have the biggest thing to talk about here, and it's something we glimpsed in the previous teasers that I talked about in my previous video. But let's just go ahead and take a look. Oh, what's that? Kind of a clawed hand in a tank. Ooh, there's that face we saw last time that I talked about and kind of speculated about. Oh, it's busting out of the tank. Again, its face does look pretty messed up. Can't help but think this is supposed to be a tyrant. It would be cool to at least see a decent tyrant in action. He looked a little slim there, but it could still be cool if it gets out and goes on a rampage. Would be hilarious if it impales Wesker, just like, you know, as a callback to the original RE1. But that was it for the trailer. A lot of stuff we saw already. There was some new things to look at and some things we saw a bit more of this time around, but I just want to draw attention to the likes and dislikes. Boy, there's a lot more dislikes. I wonder why that could possibly be. So this is coming from Entertainment Weekly. Meet Jane Goodall for zombies. Resident Evil sets up puzzle box mystery in 8 new photos. The beginning of this just sets the tone for the whole thing and for the whole Netflix Resident Evil series, just in general, you know. So let's just read this first paragraph, because this alone, I have a lot of stuff to say. I mean, most of this article I'm not even going to cover. Let's do the first paragraph. There are certain elements that have come to define the Resident Evil video games. Horror, of course, sometimes absurdist horror. Andrew Dabb, the showrunner who's using these games as inspiration for his upcoming live-action Netflix series, rattles off some of what makes them so over the top. Quote, people have lost limbs and come back. I think everybody's been cloned at this point, but some of that is just crazy fun. What? Really? People have lost limbs and come back. Alright, so I'm just going to assume he's talking about Ethan from Resident Evil 7 and 8. Ethan's whole story was, I hated it for many reasons that I don't want to get into today. But I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that because we do know that Andrew Dabb is aware of Resident Evil Village, specifically because he mentioned wanting to have giant vampire lady. That's what he called Lady Dimitrescu. Don't come at me. I know her name. He doesn't. The guy in charge of a Resident Evil show doesn't know the name of a Resident Evil villain. But he has mentioned wanting to bring in Big Vampire Lady in a second season, if possible. Shouldn't be possible because she's dead, but whatever. But so I'm assuming that's the origin of people have lost limbs and come back. Never mind the fact that people in real life lose limbs and don't die. That's not absurd. I don't see what makes that absurdist horror, but okay. The second part of his quote. I think everybody's been cloned at this point, but some of that is just crazy fun. Who has been cloned, Andrew Dabb? Who in the video games has been cloned? I think we could consider James Marcus in his situation a clone. It's not the typical kind of science fiction clone that people would think of usually, but I would think of that as a clone situation. The weird stuff with Ada and Carla, was that her name? Carla Radames? in Resident Evil 6. The woman who looked like Ada. I suppose you could consider that a clone, even though it's a woman who was made to, like, kind of transform into Ada. It's dumb. It's really, really, really dumb. So there's 2 examples that Andrew Dabb might be talking about, but who else? Because he says, I think everybody's been cloned at this point, but some of that is just crazy fun. I don't think Chris has ever been cloned. I don't think Claire's ever been cloned, or Jill, or Sherry, Carlos, Rebecca, Billy, Sheva, Josh. Wesker's never been cloned unless he's a drastically different clone in this live-action series that you are making, Andrew Dabb. Who else has been cloned? I'm honestly sitting here trying to think. I am willing to admit I could be overlooking somebody. But you know what Resident Evil thing has heavily featured clones and overused clones and all that? That would be the Mila Jovovich and Paul W.S. Anderson Resident Evil live-action movies. There were tons of clones in that, not just of Mila, but of other characters as well, like Michelle Rodriguez's character and Carlos in the movies. So if you're talking about the movies, Andrew Dabb, yeah, that could make sense. I think everybody's been cloned at this point, but some of that is just crazy fun. That would make sense if you're talking about the movies, but what about the games, Andrew Dabb? You say the games are the backstory. I don't know why you would be referencing the movies that have nothing to do with the games. What's going on here, Andrew Dabb? I'm going to skip ahead. Andrew Dabb also has some other stuff to say about Jade Wesker in his series here. Quote, what popped into my head really early on was that she's like Jane Goodall for zombies, Dabb says. She's studying them. She's trying to learn how they operate. This is a new organism. Our zombies are not the risen dead. They're infected by a virus. All of us have had a crash course in viruses the last few years. The virus changes, it evolves, and it has its own agenda. End quote. All of us have had a crash course in viruses the last few years. I hope you don't think that makes you a scientist, Andrew Dabb. You know what? Let's just change the subject, because let's see. Using a mix of author Alan Wiseman's book, The World Without Us, and the film, Children of Men, production designer James Foster envisioned a futuristic version of London overrun by nature as humanity's imprint has essentially vanished. Sounds like they definitely took inspiration from the games. For those keeping track of where we are at this point in the timeline of the Resident Evil games, this is around when the events of the latest entry, Resident Evil Village, occur. Dabb sets the stage. Quote, we are now essentially 20 plus years from the first Raccoon City. Everyone knows it was destroyed in a very tragic incident, but very few people know exactly what happened, which makes sense given that it was a bit of a cover-up in the US government. End quote. The nefarious Umbrella Corporation, the one that experimented with the T-virus and bioterrorism that created the zombified monsters in the first place, has now been reinvented by the new CEO, Evelyn Marcus, daughter of Umbrella founder and virologist James Marcus. She's not a character that exists in the games, though Dabb notes, quote, there are some hints that she could, if you dig deep enough, end quote. What are you referring to there, Andrew Dabb? Since the bioweapon track didn't work out in Umbrella's favor, Evelyn has shifted their focus to consumer products, specifically a drug called Joy. Reminds me of We Happy Few, but okay. This miracle med is designed to cure various forms of mental ailments, from depression to OCD, but patients should read the fine print, because the T-virus is included in the side effects. Dabb says one shouldn't assume that joy is the sole cause of the zombie outbreak that takes hold of the globe. It's just one piece of the puzzle. Quote, as we'll talk about in the show, you'd have to take a lot of joy to become a zombie. A lot, he remarks. But whenever you're messing with the T-virus, it usually never goes well. The fact that he thinks it's in any way worth pursuing this storyline in the context of the game's universe is insane to me. It just comes across as so dim-witted and stupid. They just wanted to use Umbrella Corporation, and they didn't care if it made any sense in the storyline of the games. They just wanted to do it. And they're trying to make it seem natural. They're trying to trick people by saying, hey, the lady in charge of this umbrella is the daughter of one of the founders of the old umbrella. It makes sense, guys. We promise. Other jigsaw pieces include the presence of Wesker, who died during the events of the game. Jade and Billy clearly also have something to do with it. Past trailers have shown that Wesker keeps vials of their blood in his lab. For what purpose? Dabb cannot say yet. Clearly he uses it to wash his face. We saw that in the trailer, for sure. Yep. That's canon. A lot of the rest of this just talks about the high school drama in the, present day portions of the show. I don't give a crap about that. Talks about Billy Wesker being more vulnerable to the perils of teen social life. Don't care about that either. And yeah, that's kind of it for the interesting stuff. So in terms of my final thoughts, I'm going to try to keep this relatively short because I've already said a lot in my previous Netflix Resident Evil videos, and my opinion hasn't really changed by anything I've seen or read. But honestly, Andrew Dabb needs to shut his mouth because I'm going a bit between being amused and being insulted by the kinds of things he says. This is yet again a person who was handed the keys to the Resident Evil universe for an adaptation, and he seems to think he understands it. He clearly doesn't, and everything he says just makes it more and more clear. I usually don't, believe it or not, I usually don't hope for projects to fail, but holy shit do I hope Netflix Resident Evil fails massively. The sad thing is, I'm sure it's something that normies can enjoy, just like the other live-action Resident Evil movies. The Paul W.S. Anderson ones specifically. They were just dumb action movies with monsters and slight horror elements. It was mostly balls-to-the-wall stupidity, though, which isn't a bad thing if it just didn't have the Resident Evil name attached to it. This franchise has been around for several decades, and we don't have a definitive, faithful, live-action adaptation of any kind. And it's Constantine Films. It is. Because regardless of the showrunners or the directors or the writers on all these various projects, it comes back to Constantine Films. They are the ones who hold the rights to adaptations, and they are the ones that just continuously fuck it up every single time. I desperately wish we could get those rights away from Constantine Films, have it so Paul W.S. Anderson isn't an executive producer, which I'm sure I doubt he has much of a role in this. I doubt he had much of a role in Welcome to Raccoon City, because a lot of times executive producer is just, it's like a vanity title. And it's just a way for somebody to get like a quick paycheck for minimal involvement. It's one of those weird titles, though, that it can mean nothing or it can mean a lot in Hollywood. Hollywood makes no sense. It doesn't. But they honestly would almost have me if this wasn't Resident Evil. Because it could be fun, but the fact that it's shitting on something I love is gonna bother me. And you know what? It probably shouldn't. Because let's face the facts. And this is something I believe I have said in my Resident Evil 5 streams recently on my second channel. That's a plug. Go check that channel out. Also, like and subscribe on this one, please. But it's gotten to the point where I think I dislike more Resident Evil than I like. And that's a super depressing thought to me, because Resident Evil has been my favorite game series my entire life, basically. And there's so many good memories attached to it, but it's kinda moved on from me, in a way. And I don't know, maybe it's about time for me to move on from it too. I'm baffled, and I hope to see you guys next time. Bye!